All right, 4-HNE is a cause of obesity. It causes fat gain in cells and in animals. It may not be the only cause, but it's definitely a cause, and it's independent of calories. And the more 4-HNE an animal or a cell has, the more fat it accumulates. Anything that raises 4-HNE in a cell or an animal raises the obesity rates. Anything that lowers 4-HNE in a cell lowers obesity rates. So it is absolutely causal. I'm going to lay out some evidence and I'm going to make my case. So 4-HNE or 4-hydroxynonenal, that's something, comes from linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid, and when it oxidizes, it breaks down into 4-HNE, acrolein, formaldehyde, and a bunch of other terrible stuff. That terrible stuff is referred to as oxlams, or the oxidized linoleic acid metabolites. They cause a whole host of problems in addition to obesity, heart disease, cancer, diabetes. It does all sorts of terrible stuff. I just want to focus on how 4-HNE causes obesity. The only way 4-HNE gets in your body is if you eat food made with linoleic acid. It has to have linoleic acid in it. Okay, so we're going to use the Tucker-Goodrich three-part standard for making our case. Whenever you're going after a common food, you need to have three pillars in place. Number one, you have to have epidemiological evidence, which is the weakest of all evidence. It's very easily manipulated. There's lots of confounding factors, but it needs to be present. The signal needs to be present in order for you to move forward. It's like correlation, not causation. Number two, there needs to be a mechanism by which the thing you're saying does the thing that it does in the body, like at the cellular level. You need to show that. And number three, you need some clinical trials, which is controlled experiments where the thing you said would happen. Tucker's the man. He's great. Check out his work. Okay. Epidemiological evidence is the weakest, but it needs to be present. Basically, humans who eat less than 1% of their calories from linoleic acid or less than 5 grams a day don't have obesity. It just doesn't exist. It's rare in those societies. So if there's 1,000 people, less than 10 of them are obese. In societies where more than 1% of their calories come from linoleic acid or more than 5 grams a day, you can have obesity rates as high as 60%. Like look at Qatar, the fattest nation in the world. So that, not the strongest case, but it's there. Okay, so let's look a little deeper. Let's kind of look, what does it do on a cellular level? So right now I'm going to talk about the work of the Zero Acre editorial team. I'm going to link to their white paper in the description. They're awesome. Please check out their work. So in 2001, these Austrian researchers showed that when you inject 4-HNE into a cell, within 2 hours it starts to accumulate fat. It just starts storing fat, takes it from energy burning mode into fat storage mode. Okay. In 2008, this university group in Arkansas did a similar experiment with worms, and they found the more 4-HNE they injected into the worm, the fatter the worms got, independent of the food that was in their environment. And when they removed the 4-HNE, the worms went from being fat back to normal worms. And again, they didn't mess with their food, their calories. They were eating the same amount of food. The more 4-HNE they put in the worms, the fatter the worms got. The less 4-HNE were in the worms, the more normal they were. So adding or removing 4-HNE leads to the increasing or decreasing of the fat, the adipose tissue, the obesity of the worms, independent of what the worms ate. Okay, the next study we're going to talk about shows that mice with genetic defects, or they gave them genetic defects, where they couldn't clear 4-HNE from their cells, from their body. So the 4-HNE would be at higher levels than mice fed the same diet who could clear 4-HNE. So if our hypothesis is correct, we would expect those mice to be more fat and become obese at a much higher rate than the mice who were fed the same diet but could clear the 4-HNE. And that's exactly what the study showed. The study showed also, too, when they induced the obesity in the mice by building up the 4-HNE, then they gave them agents to clear the 4-HNE. And as soon as they had cleared the 4-HNE from their body, they went back to normal levels of obesity. And this is independent of the calories they were eating, as both the control group and the mice they were messing with were eating the same exact diet. The ALDH2 mutation in humans, it's very common. That means people struggle to clear aldehydes or 4-HNE. So that would lead to more 4-HNE in their cells and in their body. And according to our hypothesis, if that was the case, they would have higher levels of obesity. And that's exactly what the data shows. Now, when we look at obese people versus non-obese people, in this one particular study that I'll be in the description, 300% higher levels of 4-HNE than the lean people. So the obese people had lots of 4-HNE in their cells compared to the lean people, which is also consistent with our hypothesis. Okay, so seed oils have lots of linoleic acid. That's why people say seed oils are bad because they're full of linoleic acid. So if you heat seed oils, i.e. fry it, you're going to oxidize that linoleic acid in there, and then you're going to create 4-HNE in that food. In fact, the more times you fry that food, like double frying it, triple frying it, the more 4-HNE you're going to create. And since we know 4-HNE causes obesity, if we fed that food to animals, the more times we heated it, the more obesity we would expect to find. And that is exactly what they found in the study on rabbits. The more times they heated it, the more the rabbits became obese. In fact, the most obese group that had the oil heated the most times actually ate the least number of calories of all the groups and was the fattest, again, which is consistent with our hypothesis that 4-HNE is what drives the cellular accumulation of fat, which is what drives obesity. What happens when humans eat foods fried in seed oils? The more fried food people ate, the higher their rates of obesity. The more 4-HNE they're consuming, or linoleic acid they're consuming, the more obesity they have, and that's exactly consistent. Okay, so let's talk about glutathione. Glutathione clears 4-HNE. So you'd expect that if you gave glutathione to people, they'd have lower levels of 4-HNE, and they'd have less obesity. And that is exactly what you see in humans. There's numerous studies showing that the more glutathione someone has, the less likely they are to be obese. When you use glutathione with weight loss, people get better weight loss results. Patients that have higher levels of glutathione lose more weight. People with lower levels of glutathione lose less weight. What about supplements like NAC or glycine that are precursors to glutathione in humans and raise glutathione levels? So if we gave those to patients, we would expect them to lose more weight because now they would have more glutathione, and that is exactly what happens. So basically anything that raises 4-HNE in a person or animal leads to more obesity. Anything that lowers 4-HNE in a body leads to less obesity. I think the most damning evidence of all that 4-HNE causes obesity is when you have clinical researchers and they want to test cures or treatments for obesity. They need young obese animals. So since young animals don't come obese, they have to make them obese. So how do scientists, clinical researchers, make their animals fat? They just feed them a lot of linoleic acid. They just up their diets to sometimes even as high as 20% of their diet or more. Okay, so there you have it. 4-HNE causes cells to store fat. Obesity is a condition of excess or unhealthy fat storage. 4-HNE in humans and animals seems to lead to more fat storage, more obesity. Anything that lowers 4-HNE seems to lead to less fat storage and less obesity in humans. If you want more information or free resources about 4-HNE and linoleic acid, please check out the website. It's in the description. Thank you for listening, and hopefully this helps you on your health journey.